all the attendees who are coming in today with your interest. So this is kind of like the Coffee with Bud kind of webinar series. Mentor North Carolina is the organization. And I want to give you just a little bit of information about that as we're getting started. Even though seeing some of the names, I know many of you are kind of like good friends and we know each other well. But Mentor North Carolina is really about helping other mentoring organizations in North Carolina really kind of succeed at your core missions and kind of take you to the next level. A couple of our core goals are to increase the number of mentoring relationships, the quality of those relationships, and then also in terms of making sure that we have a clear eye on racial equity in terms of how those programs are being run and who we're serving and all. One of the core reasons that I really like kind of getting this series off and running is that we offer free consulting and technical assistance. That's part of a grant funded operation. And so I just kind of see this as kind of part of that operation of kind of getting information out about research and innovations out into the world and all. My background, if you don't know me, because there are a few people who don't know me. So I've been the CEO of a couple of nonprofits, mostly school-based nonprofits. We always did evidence-based programs, and I'm kind of like the geeky, like how do we get research into the world of practice, and then how do we get the world of practice to inform the world of research so that we get this kind of nice flow back and forth. Hopefully that way we're serving young people more effectively all the time and all. And then I also ran a ed tech software company, which particularly is a little bit more relevant today since we've got an app we're talking about in particular. So that's just a little bit about me, other than the fact that I'm hanging out here by the Eno River. And if any of you are from New York, I see at least one person who might be up in New York or Boston. Some folks up there, the weather's a little nicer here probably than up there. I don't know, at least at the moment. The webinar series, we've got a couple of intentions with it. Part of it is to highlight the kinds of consulting that you can get through this grant. But I also see it as a way to kind of continue to get word out about like what is the state of research, and so how can we replicate things effectively, but also what's the emerging research. There's a side of me too that's like the innovator who's always trying to push fields forward and all too, and I think that's kind of part of the role and one of the core reasons why I invited Jean and her team here today. Let's see. Logistics, just to let people know a little bit about logistics. One, you're hearing garbage trucks in the background because that's the world of Zoom, and I apologize for that. If you have questions, post them in the chat, and what we'll do is I will monitor those, and we'll probably do most of the question answers, probably one section after Jean talks for a little bit, and a second section after, in the longer section of Q&A after Jeremy has his chance to kind of talk about the product. But if there's anything that's very pressing on it, something I may kind of jump in and kind of insert kind of that question that someone might have on it. And then one of the other logistics is we're recording this. So it'll be posted on YouTube, and actually Charmaine, who's fantastic, who's in the background here, usually gets those posted faster than I can believe. So it's also something you can direct staff to or other people that, or go back to if there's something that you want to know about that too. With that, I'm going to do introductions, and then I'm going to get out of the way because that's what I'm best at, is getting out of the way, hopefully. So we have Dr. Jean Rhodes, probably well known to a number of you in this field. She's the director of the Center for Evidence-Based Mentoring. She's the Frank Boyden Professor of Psychology at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and also kind of the kind of instigator, the visionary for creating this app as well too, as well as great about like making sure that this field of mentoring is research informed and is getting this information out. Her newsletter is fantastic about like getting that information out to all of us. Then we have we have this correct now. Jeremy is actually the assistant director of the center, and also he's kind of like one of the leading forces, he and actually Harrison, in terms of making this app concrete and forward and moving forward as well too. And so they're two of our other kind of guests as well too. So with that being said, Jean, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you everybody for joining this Coffee with Bud, because it's really an honor and a delight to share these new ideas and really get feedback from you all in terms of how you like kind of how this product that we're going to describe today might be helpful to you. So I'll just share my screen right now. real quick. Let's see. Can you see my screen? Yeah? Okay. So, what I'm going to talk about really quickly is the science behind this app that we're going to talk about and how we came to it and where we are now. So, it really started when I was writing this new book that just came out, Older and Wiser, and it's New Ideas for Youth Mentoring. It wasn't really going to be a new ideas book. It was going to be sort of catching up on a book I wrote called Stand By Me, which was like 15 years ago, and I just thought that'll be easy because I've been running the Chronicle for evidence-based mentoring. I'll just add some of the new research. It'll be easy. But what happened was I started with a very basic question, which is how effective overall is our field? And when we talk about that question, you can ask that about anything. How effective is aspirin or, you know, whatever. And what we often look to are meta-analyses, which are where you take lots of studies on a given field and put them all into one pot and just say, what is the effect size? And there's no easy conventions for what an effect size is, but bear in mind that 0.2 is considered kind of a small effect size, and 0.45 is medium, and then you get up larger. Um, a typical cognitive behavioral therapy is around 0.5 to 0.7. And what we see with youth mentoring is not only do we have a pretty small effect overall, but we have an effect that hasn't really improved in almost 20 years. And what I grabbed behind that is the investments we've made. As a scholar, all my colleagues and I investing academic articles, which is studies and getting grants to try to improve mentoring, as well as federal spending on mentoring programs. That's gone up, and yet we don't see this kind of nudging toward excellence that we see in other fields. We don't see much improvement. And so a lot of the book was trying to figure out what we're doing wrong and how we can improve it. And the book goes into much more detail about the various reasons. It's kind of a depressing chapter called How We Got It So Wrong for So Long. I'm sorry about that. Um, but the main thing is that I think that programs kind of got swept up into this world of positive youth development, and which is fine. It's focusing on protective factors and strengths and assets, and we really kind of got away from focusing on the fact that many of the young people who are referred to mentoring programs are dealing with significant clinical, behavioral, academic risk, and many of their parents, particularly parents of color, are seeing mentoring programs as an alternative to treatment. And so we have this mismatch where mentoring programs are kind of just saying, let's have fun, let's build this great relationship. Things will flow from that. And parents and youth who have immediate needs. And you can see this. This is a study that Roger DeJora, Carla Herrera, and others of my colleagues did, where in the OJJD report, they put in sort of the risk of the kids as they entered mentoring programs. And you can see that, for example, mental health challenges are double the American youth nationally. Attention deficit, having a parent who's incarcerated, living in extreme poverty, and the list goes on. Grades, behavioral regulation, a lot of things were twice as high as severe the risk. And we can only imagine with COVID that those risks are getting worse, because this is the most marginalized group. They're double the risk for poverty. And those are the kids who are having the biggest COVID slides, having mental health struggles, and so forth. So we need to kind of think about, well, what are parents looking for? What can programs do? And what I argue in the book is that our models don't necessarily fit the needs of our mentees very well, that maybe they need more than just relationship-based mentoring. They need some serious, more targeted care. And that's something that we see emerging in the field of youth mentoring, that really we get our strongest effects when we find that sweet spot between building a solid relationship, which is always what defines mentoring. Without that, there's nothing. Sine qua non is the relationship. But beyond that, we can add to that targeted goals and skills. We can really leverage those relationships much more effectively. And this is just a new meta-analysis that my lab and some colleagues in the Netherlands and Liz Raposa and I did, which is basically showing that, look, if you take this kind of non-specific kind of where you just say, okay, let's have a relationship, see what comes up, work on it, but not with any particular tools, versus programs that are really targeted. Like we are a program that is dealing with STEM or dealing with, eating disorders or academics or behavioral problems. those programs tend to have double the effects. And when we're really looking at outcomes that matter to programs, they tend to have triple the effects. So there's our kind of Rosetta Stone. That tells us what we need to do. We need to have targeted evidence-based care. But how do we get there? This is something Tim Cavell argued in a chapter, about 5 years ago, that we need to move from thinking about the relationship as the intervention to thinking about the relationship as the context for targeted evidence-based intervention. Now, that is easy if you are a targeted program. It's easy to get strong effects if you've incubated your program in a university and you're just dealing with this one particular group. But what about a program like Big Brothers Big Sisters, where every young person who comes in has a different issue that maybe they're struggling with, and maybe even a combination of issues? How can mentors be trained to deliver evidence-based care with fidelity when there's an infinite combination of young people's issues and goals coming into the program? That is where I got stuck in the book, and I put my book down for a good long time and then began to kind of say, all right, how do we get there? So the chapters that I'm going to talk about now is called The Road to Rigor. And I'm saying, you know what? Programs are good at these things, so they should all continue to do this. This is what mentoring programs, that's their sweet spot. They're trusted by parents. They are really good at recruiting mentors, screening them, assessing them, all of that stuff. Continue to do that. And if you are a small specialized program, like one that deals with kids who are being bullied, like the Lunch Buddies program of Tim Cavell, or Sam McQuillan's program, which deals with kids making the transition to middle school who are falling academically. If you've got a small targeted program and you can train your mentors to deliver targeted evidence-based intervention, stick with it and let the mentors deliver that intervention with fidelity. And usually you can monitor them pretty closely because it's usually a small program. But what about these big programs? And this is where I said, really, there's two ways to do this. One is we can train mentors to support technology-delivered interventions. You probably have a smartphone, and on your smartphone, you may have an app like Headspace or something else that gets you exercising or whatever. And that might not seem particularly consequential, but it is actually revolutionizing how we are caring for people. These apps are now delivering very strong effects with cognitive behavioral therapy, with mindfulness apps, with academic apps like Khan Academy. They're able to find that thing that the young person wants to work on and deliver it. So the mentor doesn't have to deliver the intervention. The app will deliver it exactly as it's intended. The mentor just supports it. And I'm not even going to talk about the other, but the other is really where you just have the mentor embed themselves in a system where the young person's getting care. But in both of those models, the role of the mentor shifts from delivering the intervention to supporting it. And there's actually a whole science in technology-delivered interventions called supportive accountability. And it's this notion that you can boost the effects of technology-delivered interventions by just being the person that the young person's accountable to. And we know this all the way back to, Weight Watchers or Alcoholics Anonymous. Self-improvement programs always are based on the idea that you can't do it alone, that it helps to have somebody that you're accountable to. And that's a perfect role for volunteer mentors. So I'm just going to talk briefly. There is an explosion of really good technology-delivered interventions, mental health apps. And so this super better ones, just look at those effect sizes on depression, on emotional regulation. IntelliCare, which comes out of Northwestern University, is a suite of 13 mini apps, which just recently had an article in JAMA that showed a 50% reduction in depression and anxiety symptoms. And I actually downloaded it, and it's amazing. It's got like a thought challenger. So if I am following the election and I become catastrophic, it'll challenge. I'll say, well, how likely is that? And so it's really the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy, of self-acceptance theory, of DBT. It's like all of that and constantly improving. There's ones on math. There's ones that are really geared toward toward academic skills. So if a young person's struggling in math or English or a second language, we can pull up that, and the mentor and youth can do supervised going through it, or the mentor can support and make sure they do it. So this is when my book really hit a a slow point because I had to do a deep dive. I spent probably 4 months trying to figure out, well, what are the benefits of technology delivered interventions? And I'm just going to let you go through those um, quickly. But basically, there's so many benefits. They're dynamic. Kids like them because now the ones that are youth facing are really gamified. You get badges, you get animations. They address the concerns about privacy and autonomy. They deliver things with fidelity. They collect a lot of data, and we are at a moment in kind of really using machine learning to do predictive analytics. So now we can kind of see what is how does use change outcomes and things like that. You can scale them at basically no cost. Most of the very good ones are free, and you can make linguistic adoptions. They're easy to update. So you let the scientists continue to do the program development, and then they just update their app and so forth. But there's a big problem. And this is the problem everyone is facing, no matter how great their app is, that engaging young people in apps has proven to be almost impossible. Self-improvement apps have the lowest use after 1 month. In the absence of support, less than 5% of young people reopen the app after the initial installation, even when it's being recommended by a teacher. And you see this with COVID-19, that teachers spend so much of their time just trying to get kids to use these things, to get on the platform. What a great role for mentors. So a colleague of mine, David Moore, came up with this model called supportive accountability. And I'll just read you. He says, we argue that human support increases adherence through accountability to a coach. You can plug in mentor who is seen as trustworthy, benevolent, and having expertise. So that's where the relationship comes in. But also, he and his colleagues built this whole model of supportive accountability and looked at, well, where do people fall off? Like, what are the failure points or the pain points in using an app? And what is the solution there? And so he's developed a whole model of supportive accountability. And he argues that when supplemented with coaching and opportunities to practice, which is what a mentor and mentee can do when they get back together in person or even over Zoom, technology-delivered interventions can produce outcomes that rival those of face-to-face, often at no cost and in ways that are often more geographically, financially, and socially acceptable. And I'll even say socially distance acceptable now. And so I'll end here pretty much saying that we had this amazing volunteer workforce, hundreds of thousands of caring adults willing to give up, up to an hour a week of their time, maybe sometimes more, but they needed evidence-based tools. We have all these evidence-based tools that are out there in need of coaches and mentors. And the idea that Jeremy's going to talk about is, how do you put those two things together? How do you harness the caring potential of mentoring programs in the service of delivering evidence-based interventions to young people that can help them? This is something I had my poor doctoral student do, but basically these are what intervention descriptions. These are all technology delivered interventions. The blue is the effect size when there's no support, and the mustard color is the effect size when there is support. And the data are so clear that you can improve the effectiveness of all of these internet-based interventions simply by providing the person with a coach who provides supportive accountability. So what we've created, and what I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy to talk about, is an app that is basically a supportive accountability app. A lot of apps like Headspace or Duolingo and others that we're partnering with have coaching dashboards. IntelliCare has one too, but we didn't want a mentor to have to go in and join all of the different coaching dashboards. So what we tried to do is create a one-stop place where the mentor can just see whether or not the young person is using their app, and through something called API, but basically the usage data just gets shifted over to Mentor Hub, and the mentor can see whether or not their mentee is using it, nudge them, troubleshoot, praise, and so forth. So now I will stop and see if there's any questions, not about the app, because Jeremy's going to tell you a lot more, but about the science that went into that.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, actually, Charmaine, if you would help us, if you want to kind of just ask in the chat or kind of raise your hand, what we'll do is we'll open up your mic so you can ask this. But this is a great transition, because Jean, that was fantastic. In 15 minutes, you just condensed a 150-page book, which has hundreds of articles behind it and all. So I have no idea how much people's heads are swimming at this point or not. But if you have questions about particularly the research, now's a great time to kind of be able to kind of present those to Jean, because she really did summarize a lot. I mean, that was a semester long course in terms of like mentoring.
Hi, Jean. This is Charlene Campbell. I'm in North Carolina, and we are a group mentoring organization. We don't have outside mentors or individual mentors. Um, and what I'm running to, we've been holding our sessions twice a month virtually, but what I'm running into is we're missing the connection with those kids that are painfully shy. They were painfully shy before COVID, and now they've gone into this bubble of, well, I don't have to turn my screen on, I don't have to say anything. And it's making my job harder trying to reach them. I can reach them, but I can't pull them out of that shyness shell that I could do when we were face to face, without feeling like I'm bullying them, trying to encourage them and push them to speak and turn that camera on, turn your camera on. So I feel like I'm losing a battle with those kids that are just, and truly, when I say painfully shy, I mean, after speaking sometimes in front of a group, they'll have to walk away in tears because it's just that hard for them
Mm,
to do
yeah.
that. And so we were working with them, face to face in small bits to try to bring them out of that. But now with virtually, it's really hard to deal
Yeah.
with. Are there
Well,
any apps that can help
there
with that?
is an app for that. In fact,
Woo!
my postdoc, she just got her PhD in clinical psych from University of Virginia, where she was working on an app, and she's a supportive accountability expert. So you can see why I hired her.
Mhm.
She was working on an app for that very issue. Psychologists call it social anxiety. And, I think a lot of us are anxious about performing, but for people who are socially anxious, the research behind it suggests it's because they kind of misinterpret ambiguous clues as rejection. And so, what Mind Trails does is it kind of shows the young person different situations and scenarios and says, okay, this is the situation you're walking down the street and a friend doesn't wave to you or whatever, and it gets them to reinterpret the the social clues in a way that's more forgiving and comforting. And mentors and youth working on that can make a big difference. That's an evidence-based program. You can Google it. It's called Mind Trails. Bethany Teachman is the inventor of it, and we are now creating a youth-facing version that we are connecting to Mentor Hub with, because it actually is a big problem for many kids. And it might also be the case that they don't necessarily have to be in a group with the camera on, but they could be doing mind trails and kind of building up their skills a little bit before they re-enter the group.
Thanks, Charlene. Appreciate that. Anyone else have questions about the research?
So we could turn it over to Jeremy.
Jeremy, it's all the
Sure. It
show is
looks like
yours.
I think there was one more question. Yeah, it looks like Tisha was added to the room if Tisha had a question as well.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate the data that you shared, and that is a challenge for small nonprofits, right? To, collaborate with someone, a researcher, or anyone to kind of help get that evidence-based curriculums and different things. So I do appreciate that. And my question was, is all that data shared in your book, or are there resources or links that that you could recommend that we could look at to see what some of those trends are?
Well, all the data are shared in the book.
Okay.
The one other place is our website, which is mentorhubapp.org. There's a little button you can push that says the science, and it goes into the science behind the app. But if you want that big picture of trends in the field of youth mentoring, I would say the book and the Chronicle of Evidence-Based Mentoring are two good sources.
Thank you.
Jean, there's also a question about like what were the ages of the youth that the studies were done on that you were referring to?
Well, I don't know what study, the ones on technology delivered interventions or, um,
Well, the other part I guess that's in here is that the comment was, we're finding it harder to connect with elementary school students because of the lack of access to technology and their understanding of how it works.
Yeah, that's right. Well, um, we're actually testing this with Friends of the Children, so we'll have more data on how effective it is. But one thing that we're finding is that even though young people might not have broadband, most have access to a don't have internet, a computer. Most have access to a smartphone, and they begin using it at pretty early ages. And the apps that have been created for preschoolers and, even elementary age are really appealing. Like they know that they're competing for their attention. So, we're looking into apps like one by Sesame Street that really grabs kids. That's a little younger, but the Khan Academy for kids has really fun things for them to do. There's meditation apps for kids. So I think in some ways we're finding that there was a study that was done by Pew, and they found that um, if you ask a young person, elementary or teenage, what's your preferred way of communicating? It's almost always by way of their smartphone texting. It's not email. It's only 6% said email, and over 90% said their phone. And so I think that we kind of have to meet kids where they are. And you'll see when Jeremy gets to his demo that we have, a chatting built in, because what I found so interesting is that in the field of mentoring, we're all about safety, but we really don't have a way to kind of monitor the texting that goes on between young people and their mentors. And that's another thing we've built into this, is that additional safety component. So I think we should probably turn it over to Jeremy so that he has plenty of time. But if there's other questions, maybe we could save them to the end.
Yeah, so folks, feel free to continue to post questions. I'll accumulate those, but Jeremy and Harrison, the show is yours.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Gene, and thanks everyone for being here. My internet is behaving it's a little spotty today, so hopefully everyone can hear me, but put in the chat if anything is hard to hear or anything like that. What I'm going to start off by doing is talking a little bit about what the Mentor Hub app looks like, and then I'll show you very quickly a video that will give you an even more concrete sense of that. So I'll start by saying that it's a multi-sided platform. So you've got sort of a mentor interface and a mentee interface. And then we also have some programmatic tools that you can use at the level of people that directly oversee matches and match caseloads, and then even at a higher level from sort of an organizational administration standpoint. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen here with computer sound. And yeah, someone let me know if they can't hear this, but I'm just going to hit play, and then we can kind of jump into more details about this afterwards.
Welcome to Mentor Hub, a supportive accountability app. Mentor Hub was created based on the idea that we can widely deliver targeted, evidence-based interventions that work through technology, and that they're most effective with a little support. We are aiming to achieve this by partnering with best-in-class third-party apps that provide interventions in mental health, education, and more. Using the existing framework of a supportive mentoring relationship, Mentor Hub can help facilitate positive change for young people everywhere. We're going to start by taking you through the mentee experience. Start by logging in with your phone number. We'll send you a one-time password to log in, so you'll never have to remember one. Once you're logged in, you'll be prompted to take your baseline assessment, customized by your organization. Organizations can decide how frequently this assessment occurs, ranging from weekly all the way up to every 6 months. Next, you'll take the mood ring. The mood ring was designed to capture a weekly snapshot of how you're feeling about several challenges in your life. You can slide from left to right in each category to indicate how much that challenge is bothering you this week. You can earn points in Mentor Hub by completing your mood ring and using partner apps. After completing the mood ring, our built-in algorithm will suggest an app to you based on your responses. For example, Super Better can help you build resilience and stay positive through difficult situations. Your dashboard gives you a quick overview of your relationship with your mentor. See the breakdown of your mood ring and points here. You can choose to sort these visualizations by monthly, weekly, or latest. The mood ring tab provides an in-depth view of each category we ask about over time, so you and your mentor can view how these change. Messaging is built into Mentor Hub. You can catch up, talk about any goals or challenges you have, and more. If you ever feel uncomfortable in a conversation, we've built in the option to flag it, pausing your chat. You can always unflag it after if this was a mistake. Finally, the More tab features information about the app, resources, and your mentee profile. Here you can see badges you've earned and badges still to earn. The Mentor app is a lot like the Mentee app. It's designed to give you insight and transparency into your mentee's activity, giving you the tools to provide supportive accountability. Log in the same way you would for the Mentee app, and you'll see your dashboard right away. View message engagement statistics and an overview of your mentee or mentees. You'll be able to quickly see their last activity date from here. If you have multiple mentees, the Mentee tab will give you an overview of all their top challenges. You can also receive your one-time password via email. Click on a mentee to see their profile. You can see their mood ring responses, app usage, and badge progress in this tab. Use the chat function to communicate. You can also use the chat to remind your mentee to track their mood ring progress. If they haven't completed it in more than 7 days, MentorHub will prompt you to send them a quick nudge so they stay on track. Thank you so much for your interest in MentorHub, and we hope that we can work with you soon.
All right. So I hope that gives everyone kind of a better sense of what MentorHub actually looks like. And so, as I mentioned, there's a two-sided aspect to it where you've got the mentor and mentee portal and then the programmatic tools. I will also show everyone kind of what the dashboard looks like very shortly. And if there are any questions in the chat, please feel free to read them out, Bud. But I do want to highlight, it actually probably makes more sense. I'll just go right into the dashboard to kind of show everyone how that looks as well. And then we can kind of get into questions and anything else. So all of the information that you just saw in the Mentor and Mentee app corresponds to this dashboard that you're seeing here. And this is the program manager level. So it aggregates all of the data for mentees in a given program. So that mood ring that you saw is actually based on some research by a professor named John Weiss at Harvard. And he did a study where he actually asked young people to rank the severity of the challenges that they were experiencing in their daily life on a weekly basis. So he said, tell me what the most challenging things you're experiencing are and rank them from 1 to 10. And he found in that study that the answers actually corresponded pretty well to psychometric questionnaires. So, questionnaires that actually assess depression and anxiety. And so based on that, we built the mood ring. And so what you're seeing from kind of like a UI perspective is that you can mouse over any of these categories to get an actual sense of the data point and how severe that challenge is. You can kind of turn these on or off if you'd like to just see a few of the different variables mapped out against one another if you exclude some. And then on the dashboard, you're also seeing the top downloads that we've got here. As Jean mentioned earlier, the way that we integrate with our partner apps is that we have an API sharing agreement, which essentially means that we call their database for a specific user based on a string like a phone number or an email. And then they tell us on any given day whether there was usage for one of those apps. And so these numbers correspond to the total number of downloads within a program. Obviously, this is our test program. So within a real program, these might be higher. But then you also get an overview of messaging statistics. So something that we think fits really nicely into the model of supportive accountability is the fact that there's this secure chat portal built right into MentorHub. And that has a couple different functions, but it can directly act as a way for mentors to nudge mentees about using the partner apps, but it can also be a safe place to have a virtual conversation in a way that programs can actually monitor that conversation. And so at a glance, a program manager can log into this dashboard and see the number of messages that are being sent back and forth within the program. This, again, you can turn these on and off if you just want to look at one of the sides of the conversation. But hopefully this will allow a brief overview at a glance. And then if you'd like more specific information, the program manager actually has the ability to click into a mentor and a mentee's profile. So I'll click into my own mentor profile here. I'm both the program manager and the mentor here. And what you can see is now just the messages that I've sent and received with my mentees. I have quite a few mentees, but this is flexible such that the system works with a program that is a one-to-one match, or a program where the mentor is matched with several mentees. And then you can also see that mood ring segmented by just an individual mentor with all of the same kind of UI functionality. The other aspect of this that I haven't mentioned yet is that the program manager can actually message mentors. So a mentor's sort of experience can be very consolidated into Mentor Hub, such that messages can be sent to a mentee and to program staff. And if you click into this conversation, you'll see a very substantive interaction here that I had with myself. But obviously, this would give you access to the program manager kind of, in real time and in a very direct way that's consolidated into Mentor Hub. I'll show you as well what it looks like to click into a mentee profile. The mentee profile actually gives you all of the same information that a mentor would see, but now at a program staff level, so that you can have that oversight. And what you're seeing here is the mood ring tracked out over time. Again, you're actually able to look and click on individual points here to see the percentage that the mentee slid for that corresponds to kind of the severity of the challenge. And what we think is nice about this is you can kind of see how it changes over time. So in Harry's case here, he seems to have had a bit of an arc with achievement. And so that also acts as a jumping off point to kind of understand what a mentee might be going through. And it's something that, maybe they wouldn't have talked about otherwise, but it actually lets you have an in to investigate what some of those challenges might be about, how you can help with them. And then these screens are actually visually going to appear exactly the same as in the mentor profile, but you can keep in mind that these are now the individual mentees' information as viewed by the program manager. You can also see those broken down on an individual dimension basis. You can see the responses to the initial questionnaire, which in the video, there's a short screen describing that organizations can customize their questionnaire, and we do that to have kind of like a baseline assessment, and then an assessment that can occur at a given frequency and give you a sense of like the delta in how some of those items might have moved. But a program manager can see that right in the dashboard. And then finally, this is the piece that I was mentioning. The program manager has insight into the conversation between the mentor and the mentee. So this is, you're able to scroll back and see a full transcript, but you can have that full visibility right here. And then finally, we don't have any flagged mentors currently in our test organization. But if a mentee were to flag a mentor, this is where they would show up, and the program manager would be able to kind of go into the conversation and see what might be causing that issue. So in broad strokes, that's how the dashboard works. And I think that I'll pause there and kind of let anyone ask questions they might have about the interface and about how we're thinking about this. I don't know if Gene or Harrison, if you have anything that you'd like to jump in with, please feel free. But yeah, excited to hear feedback and thoughts about this.
Yeah, so if you have questions, if you have comments or suggestions, throw them in the chat, and Charmaine will help us out by kind of opening up your mic so that you can ask Jeremy or Gene or Harrison directly. All right, well, people are either typing or because they're doing their social anxiety thing and they don't want to be the person here. I have some questions for the group. So my first question, which I'd like to ask of everyone, if on a scale of 0 to 10, how interesting is this app to you? So a 10 being the highest, like sign me up like now. I absolutely have to have this. 0 being I have absolutely no interest in this thing. This thing doesn't do anything for me, and you can judge in the middle. So if in the chat, rate this. How interesting is this app to you? And then I'm going to have some follow-up questions for folks too around that.
And while people are putting those ratings in the chat, I'll also say that we are looking to expand the feature set of what's currently available. So we're looking to introduce some new elements around video chatting. We're going to be adding some administrative roles that allow more segmentation of a caseload. We'll be adding a web dashboard actually for mentees. So I think there had been some kind of questions about access. We want to make it available on a variety of different mediums. So whether that's a smartphone, whether that's a web dashboard, we're expanding that out. And then finally, we're also adding a resources tab, which will actually give programs the ability to link material to the Mentor Hub interface itself, so that both mentors and mentees can kind of click into those resources. And whether it's something like an additional mental health resource or a program specific newsletter or push of some kind, you'll be able to store all of that in one place. So we're hoping to give programs even more tools to kind of be effective in what they do and share material widely.
So as people kind of keep putting in their numbers, and those numbers are really, really actually helpful to us, not just for this conversation, but I'm kind of using you guys as a little bit of an impromptu focus group to get a little bit of feedback here. But I'm kind of curious, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I see Richard, Tisha, Crystal, and Thomas and Anna rated it all pretty highly, and actually Karen Walker too. If one of you guys is, I would love to hear from one or more of you guys, if you want to raise your hand if you're comfortable asking this, like why are you what is so interesting about this app that you would really love to be using it?
Hi, thank you. This is Rich. One of the reasons why I rated and by the way, Gene, I did read your book actually twice, so I'm a fan. But one of the reasons that I think the app is so important, because I think it completes what I call the service triangle between the agency, the mentor, and the mentee. I understand that mentorship in and of itself is not the silver bullet that's going to heal the family, but it's a very important piece. And I like this app because I think this is a tool that the mentor can use in conjunction with the family, because I think so often in mentor-mentee relationships, we forget about the rest of the family. So I think this is an opportunity for us to engage the family in a meaningful way by actually showing them data in terms of what's going on with their young person. So I just think it's a tremendous opportunity to bring the entire system within that young person's life together.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for reading the book. And more importantly, thanks for those comments. I'll just say a couple things. And one is that best practice in support of accountability is for the mentor and possibly the parent to also be using the apps that the young person is using. So we see there being reciprocal benefits. If a mentor is learning about how to regulate emotions or deal with depression or anxiety, that's likely to help them as well, including also the parents. And so we see it kind of getting into more than just the young person's life in many ways. So the other thing you mentioned was the data. And we're really just at the beginning. But if you think about all the data, it's like weekly mood data. All of those chats that we can now, if we wanted to, de-identify them, we can do data mining and text analysis and look at progression of relationships, look at how app use weekly affects different outcomes, look at the quality of the relationship over time. I mean, there's just so much data that can be used to improve the field of mentoring, I think, because it's all captured, so, incorporated into these infographics and visualizations.
Charmaine, I think you said a couple more people had their hands raised. If you could unmute them, that'd be great.
Hi, this is Karen Lucas Walker. I rated it high for several reasons. One, I think it's going to be proved to be a safe way for both the mentor and the mentee to have conversations and to be able to monitor those conversations. Not so much be listening in, but you have a record of, times they connected and were able to, share with one another. And it also will be a reinforcement to and support to the use of technology. For some young people, this may be very new to them in terms of technology and how they've had to pivot and be, thrown into uh, because of COVID-19. And so this could be proved to be another means of kind of supporting and reinforcing and also identifying some things that they're struggling with.
Yeah. Um, so the person who started Khan Academy, which is like an academic um, platform, just wrote an op-ed in the New York Times, and he said, you know, the technology alone is not enough for young people. We need to engage teachers to make sure that young people are using them. We need to engage parents in looking at the behind the scenes data to see how they're progressing. And if you think about how overtaxed teachers are right now and parents are right now as they're juggling jobs and childcare, it really is a nice way for mentors to kind of help families that are struggling with these things and play this important role in keeping kids on track. So, I mean, when we created Mentor Hub, it was way before the pandemic, but it certainly, you know, I think the pandemic has kind of pushed it forward much quicker than it might have been because of the needs of families and young people right now.
Great, thank you. Crystal, I think you have the floor. Wait a second, you're
Sorry, I
not.
didn't unmute myself.
There you
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Crystal Zellis, and I'm calling from Greensboro, North Carolina, and I work at North Carolina African Services Coalition. We're a refugee resettlement agency, and we offer youth services. So this would be a great opportunity to connect with our students. We have, because of COVID, had a number of volunteers who were college students and adults looking for things to do have joined us, and they're not located always in our city. So this could expand our reach for volunteers, which is a great opportunity. As well as we work with students across our county, and it's a very large county. So this gives us another opportunity to connect with our students without having to bring them in because of social distance. So it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, that I'm glad, and we're actually putting Duolingo. We're entering a partnership with Duolingo to provide language or whatever refugees might need in addition to mental health care and other things. Um, the one thing I think the reason we created this even before the pandemic is that even though it provides a way to do socially distancing mentoring, we believe that there's a role for the face-to-face meeting every week to practice the skills. I mean, no matter what skill you're learning, nothing happens if you don't practice it. And that's a really good role for the mentor. Again, they're not delivering the intervention, but when you get together, you would, work on it a little bit. And so I do see the face-to-face complementing it. It also aligns with what we've learned. I'm a clinical psychologist, and what we've learned from therapy. I used to do therapy, and the person would come in and talk to me for a week, an hour a week, and then they'd leave. And there would be no homework, nothing to do in between. And now more and more therapists are seeing that hour as really just kind of the beginning, because during the week there's lots of assignments and lots of homework that the young person should be doing. And so what Mentor Hub can do, if we align it with the right apps, is kind of extend the week and get the young person working on things between the meetings. And then the meetings can be more just kind of forming that relationship, celebrating victories and success, and maybe practicing a little bit. So I do believe that when we get back to that hybrid model, I mean, I call this in the book the blended model, because it really does supposed to blend face to face with technology.
Charlene Campbell, looks like you're unmuted. Give
Jean just took exactly what I was about to say. When we only meet twice a month, that gap in those days that we're not with them, it's almost like there's just nothing. Although I have some kids that'll text me things and say, "Hey, what you doing?" I mean, I'll get that from time to time from some of my kids because I'm sure they're on board, and they'll just say, "Hey, what you doing?" But most of the kids, I'm not having that direct contact with. So this is something that I can use to monitor and to see what they're doing when they're not in our space twice, 2 hours on a Saturday morning. So I think it would be a very useful tool for us.
Good. And yeah, we see it as a continuous conversation because of the app feature. Like the young person gets a notification that they just got a text from their mentor, and so there's a continuous back and forth, and the mentor can issue badges for accomplishments. These digital credentials are actually really meaningful to young people, and so yeah, we do see it as a way to kind of thread the sessions.
And then one more question, and Thomas, you're up next, and then I have another question for the group. Thomas?
Hey, I'm thinking about this as being helpful for one, fidelity, right? Because you got the pathways run, and you know that's got to help in terms of keeping people somewhat tethered to where you want them to be. I also see it being potentially valuable for evaluation, in that you begin to have consistently uh, uh, defined ways that you're looking at things. Something like this, I always think of it as a two-edged sword, because all those things can be pluses or minuses that that work in the system. The other thing is, I'm thinking that we, where I work, use a communitarian model, meaning that mentoring is one-on-one, but it's also intended to be a socially developed process that integrates young people more into communities, so they feel more apart and they have strength in those communities. So I'm wondering, to what extent could the app accommodate that?
Accommodate kind of in community engagement.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and so to promote it, to perhaps have, so that everything is not just one-on-one,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Uh,
'Cause,
uh,
there's lots of issues that one-on-one can't address, like stigma, for example.
right.
You can do something with that, but having group solidarity can do very different things in terms of stigma.
Hmm. Jeremy or Harrison, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question. I will say that in the system currently, from like a technology standpoint, you can link several mentees to one mentor. We've heard some feedback about the advantage potentially of group messaging, or having, the reverse, where maybe you have two mentors and a single mentee. Currently, we haven't sort of accommodated that, but I do think there are ways to use this in a community-based setting, where there's a lot of communication, either through the app or otherwise, about kind of collectively using something that, whether the app might specifically be about addressing stigma, or whether it's used in conjunction with a larger discussion around some of those things. So I don't know if that quite answers your question, but that's some of my thoughts about your comment.
So I have a different question now for the group. And so my very practical side is, why would you not use this app? Like, what are your doubts? What are the barriers that you see? Anything that falls into that where you're just like, you know, I don't know about this. So do one of two things: either post that in the chat, and we'll see that. But if you want to raise that question to see kind of what the potential solution is, raise your hand, and Charmaine will open you up so that you can ask Jeremy or Harrison or Jean directly. I see one comment: cost is an issue or a potential barrier.
Yeah, so we're still trying to figure that out. Right now, this is a nonprofit. We're not trying to make money off of this. It's really the culmination of my 30 years of studying mentoring, and it just felt like a tool that could advance the field. Um, we are looking at nonprofit models where we'll probably try to get corporate sponsorship and grants, and other ways to offset the price. There may be some ways in which there's a free model for everybody, but then if you want to customize it with, your logo or particular features, we might be able to, have some revenue there. But I think what we're aiming for is that it's going to be free for programs at a particular level of it, and then there'll be other costs after that. Now, obviously that's one of the reasons I'm connect with Bud is he's going to help me figure that out, and my team, Harrison and Jeremy, because right now we don't really have big designs to make a ton of money off of this, but to make it sustainable where we can have talented staff, we'll need to figure something out.
All right. I mean, I know there's a lot of practical people out there. What's the everyone has their BS filter. Like, come on, like I'm curious about what are the other things that might hold you up from using it? Because this is actually the real kind of practical feedback that the developers need to know of, like, yeah, these are things that would be barriers to implementing it potentially.
I saw a comment about integration with our CRM. And I think that's definitely something that we are thinking about, but also something that as a pilot product, we have not yet built out the functionality to do. So I think that that's a great piece of feedback and something that we're really looking forward to being able to cater to in the future.
Great. Well, I also want to respect everyone's time. So a couple of things. One is I just realized in terms of the free consulting that we can offer through the grant, we potentially could actually get requests to do that to actually help you implement the app, putting a couple pieces together and all. Jeremy, Harrison, or Jean, do you have any last words? Any thoughts or questions out to the group?
Just that this doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. You can always email me, or we'll put you in touch. Maybe, Charmaine, you can put out our emails so that the group can continue to ask questions and we can continue the dialogue. And also my slides will be available if anybody wants to see those. Also, mentorhubapp.org has a ton of information. So we really want to work with you guys and we really want to work with Bud. So I see this is happening. Somebody's asking how soon. I think it can happen quickly. We're already rolling it out in several programs.
Great. Jeremy, it looked like you were going to say something.
There were a couple questions in the chat that I just didn't want to let go by. One about segmenting by age group. And that one, I will say that we definitely will be able to create kind of subdivisions, or you could create multiple programs within a larger organization to accommodate younger people and older people. And then I did see another question about app size. The app itself is actually a very small app, and the partner apps aren't particularly large either. So that's definitely, I'm glad that you raised that, but I think that at least in terms of MentorHub's footprint, it's relatively small. So and thank you all so much.
Yeah, Jean, Jeremy, Harrison, thank you so much for taking your time. The folks that are on the call, the attendees, I really appreciate this. And reminders, we will be sending out information about links and contact information, and the recording of this will be posted on YouTube pretty quickly. We have a YouTube site so that you can get it and you can direct other folks to. But thank you so much. And Charmaine, thank you for running the show in the background. You've been fantastic.
And thank you, Bud, for pulling it all together.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks.